feels like AI is just everywhere these days, right? You can't really avoid it. From, quick chatbot answers to much bigger things like AI helping out in healthcare, it's embedding itself really fast.
It really is. And I know I'm not the only one thinking about, well, what happens when it doesn't work as planned? What are the real consequences?
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're digging into today. We've pulled together quite a few sources here.
Yeah, we've got everything from these databases that track AI failures, like actual incidents,
Right.
to official guidelines trying to set standards for responsible AI, and even analyses looking at why these systems act the way they do.
So the idea is to get past the sort of high-level talk about AI ethics.
Exactly. We want to look at the nitty-gritty, the practical challenges, and let's be honest, some of the big mistakes we've seen already.
Yeah, for you listening, we want to show concrete examples of where AI has, well, messed up and what we're learning or should be learning from that. So let's get into it.
Okay, let's start with something we're seeing more and more: AI hallucinations.
Hallucinations.
Yeah.
Like the AI is seeing things.
Not quite like that. It's more like the AI confidently states something that's completely false, like a made-up fact it presents as real.
Ah, okay. So it's literally generating false information.
Precisely. And the impact can be, well, pretty significant.
Like that law firm case, Livido and Oberman.
Exactly. They got hit with a $5,000 fine because they submitted legal briefs citing cases that didn't actually exist. An AI chatbot just invented them.
Wow. $5,000 might not sound like a lot for a firm, but the precedent.
That's the key thing. Judge Castell's ruling was really pointed. He said, look, AI tools can be helpful, sure, but the lawyers are still 100% responsible for checking the facts. He highlighted that they kept pushing these fake cases even after questions were raised.
So no, the AI ate my homework excuse.
Definitely not. It signals that courts probably won't accept AI errors as a get-out-of-jail-free card for professional standards. It's a big deal for how lawyers and likely other professions have to approach these tools.
It really drives home that human oversight, that critical check, is absolutely essential. You can't just blindly trust the output.
No, you can't.
Then there was that Air Canada incident with Mr. Moffat.
Ah, yes. The chatbot gave him wrong information about bereavement fares, I believe.
Right. And he sued when Air Canada didn't honor the incorrect advice.
And their initial defense was interesting. They basically tried to argue the chatbot was its own thing, a separate legal entity.
Seriously, like the chatbot should get its own lawyer.
Sort of. But the tribunal thankfully didn't buy it. They said Air Canada is responsible for all information on its site, AI or not.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Will other companies try that tactic, try to distance themselves legally from their AI's mistakes? It's something to watch.
Definitely. So the big takeaway from these first examples is accountability, right? You deploy AI, you're responsible for it, especially when it's dealing with customers or professional work.
Absolutely. The buck stops with the organization using the AI.
Okay, let's shift focus a bit. AI isn't just text. It's getting really good with images and video, too. We're seeing potential in media, even sports.
Oh, yeah, the idea of AI generating, say, interactive post-game interviews where fans could ask questions, that sounds pretty cool.
It does sound revolutionary, letting fans feel more connected.
But there's a flip side.
The Klay Thompson deepfake.
Yeah.
That was unsettling.
It really was. An AI-generated video of him supposedly in a press conference. That looked incredibly real. A lot of people were fooled.
And it just highlights how easily this tech could be used to spread, well, fake news or misinformation.
The scary part is how convincing these deepfakes are becoming. For you, trying to stay informed, it adds this huge layer of difficulty, you know? How do you tell what's genuine anymore?
It's a massive challenge for all of us navigating the digital world.
Definitely.
Now, something else that comes up a lot is the black box problem in AI. Sounds kind of mysterious.
It does, but the core idea is pretty straightforward. With really complex AI, especially deep learning models, it becomes incredibly hard for us humans to understand how it reached a specific decision.
Why is that? Is it just too complicated?
Essentially, yes. These models can have millions, even billions, of internal connections, parameters, learned from data. Tracing the exact path from input to output isn't like following simple rules. It's, well, opaque. a black box.
So it's not like traditional statistics where you can point to specific variables and say, okay, this factor had this much weight.
Exactly. Those models are often designed to be interpretable, but many modern AI systems learn these incredibly complex, nonlinear relationships directly from data, which makes their reasoning process much harder to unpack.
Okay, got it. Is there a good example of this?
There's a famous one, an AI system that classified images of dogs. It kept confusing huskies with wolves.
Okay. Why? They look kind of similar sometimes, I guess.
That's what you'd think. But when researchers dug into why the AI was making the mistake, using explainability techniques, they found the AI wasn't really looking at the dog's features much at all. It had learned that pictures labeled wolf often had snow in the background.
No way. So it was classifying based on the snow.
Pretty much. It took a shortcut, associating snow with wolves. So show it a husky in the snow, and it confidently says wolf.
Wow. Okay, that perfectly illustrates why just getting the right answer isn't enough. You need to know why it got that answer, especially for important decisions.
Precisely. And that leads us straight to the need for explainability and interpretability in AI. We need trustworthy systems where we can actually get some insight into their reasoning. It's about cracking open that black box.
Makes total sense. So we've seen a few specific cases. Let's zoom out a bit. I know you mentioned databases tracking these incidents. What do they tell us overall?
Right. The AI incident database is a key resource here. Looking at their data, the areas popping up most often with reported ethical issues are things like intelligent service robots.
Which could be anything from factory arms to chatbots, like we discussed.
Exactly. Also, language and vision models, the kind that can generate text or images, and maybe unsurprisingly, autonomous driving systems.
Okay, let's break those down. Service robots, what kinds of issues?
It's a real mix. Sometimes it's just poor performance, the robot not doing its job right. Other times it can be safety concerns, especially with physical robots.
And language and vision models. We touched on deepfakes, but what else?
They're vulnerable to what are called adversarial attacks. Think of it like making tiny, almost invisible changes to an image that completely fool the AI.
Like changing a stop sign just enough that the AI thinks it's a speed limit sign, even though a human wouldn't notice.
Exactly, that kind of thing. And building defenses against those attacks is a constant cat and mouse game.
Right. And autonomous driving. That's had some really serious incidents.
Tragically, yes. The fatal crash involving an Uber self-driving test vehicle and Elaine Hertzberg in Arizona back in 2018 is a stark example.
I remember that. What went wrong, technically?
The system actually detected her, but it struggled to classify her correctly, first as an unknown object, then a vehicle, then a bicycle, and it failed to predict her path accurately. Crucially, the human safety driver was also distracted.
A terrible combination of system limitations and human failure.
It really was. And it highlights why these risk management frameworks we'll talk about are so vital. They're meant to catch and mitigate these potential failures before they lead to tragedy.
That incident definitely sparked a huge debate about who's liable when an autonomous system fails.
It absolutely did. And it caused Uber and several other companies to pause their testing programs to reevaluate safety.
The database also mentioned identity authentication, like facial recognition.
Yeah, that's another big area. Facial recognition has shown vulnerabilities being fooled by 3D masks, or even just twins sometimes.
And bias too, right?
Definitely. There was that case with the New Zealand passport system having trouble processing a photo of a man of Asian descent, initially flagging his eyes as closed. That points to biases likely learned from the training data.
So if you look at all these incidents together, what are the main themes, the main types of ethical problems cropping up?
The analysis usually groups them into a few categories. There's inappropriate use, which often just means the AI performed badly, didn't work as expected.
Okay.
Then there are issues around identity, fairness, and discrimination, like the racial bias examples. Physical safety is a major one, especially with robots and vehicles. Unfair outcomes from algorithms.
Like loan applications or hiring tools, maybe?
Could be, yeah. Also, clearly unethical or illegal uses of AI. And of course, security and privacy concerns are always present.
And is this getting worse? Are we seeing more incidents?
The data suggests a sharp increase in reported incidents after around 2010, which makes sense with the wider adoption of AI. And geographically, the US, China, and the UK seem to have the most documented incidents, likely reflecting where a lot of the development and deployment is happening.
Okay, so it's clear these aren't just isolated glitches. They're real challenges that come with this powerful technology. What's being done about it? Are people developing rules or guidelines?
Yes, definitely. There's a growing global movement towards responsible AI. Various organizations and governments are creating ethical frameworks. For instance, in India, NTI Aayog put out an approach document for responsible AI. They clearly expect AI to become deeply integrated into society.
And India's already using AI in some interesting ways, aren't they?
Oh, absolutely. They've trialed things like using AI with CCTV cameras for managing huge crowds at events like the Kumbh Mela.
Wow. Okay.
And in healthcare, there's Wadhwani AI using it to help screen newborns for low birth weight, Dharamai working on breast cancer detection, even IIT Madras looking at predicting if expectant mothers might drop out of healthcare programs.
That's a really diverse set of applications, from public safety to very personal healthcare.
It is. It shows the breadth of AI's potential impact.
What about elsewhere? I know NIST in the U.S. is influential in tech standards.
Right. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, developed the AI Risk Management Framework, the AI RMF 1.0.
AI RMF, okay. What's the core idea there?
It starts from the premise that AI brings both huge benefits and significant risks. So you absolutely need a structured way to manage those risks. It's not just about building AI, but building it safely and reliably.
So how does the framework suggest doing that? What are the steps?
It's structured around four main functions. First is govern establishing the policies and culture for risk management within an organization.
So setting the stage.
Exactly. Then MAP, really understanding the context. Where will this AI be used? What could go wrong? Identifying those potential risks.
Okay, map the terrain.
Then measure, figuring out how to actually assess and track those risks. How likely are they? How bad could they be?
Putting numbers on it, sort of?
In a way, yes. And finally, manage, deciding what to do about the risks, prioritizing them, taking steps to reduce them, treating the risk.
Govern, map, measure, manage. Sounds logical.
Yeah.
Does NIST define what makes an AI system trustworthy?
It does. They list several characteristics. Trustworthy AI should be valid and reliable, meaning it actually works correctly for its intended purpose.
Makes sense.
It needs to be safe, secure, and resilient so it can withstand attacks or unexpected situations. Accountable and transparent, who's responsible, and you have some visibility into how it works.
Back to that black box problem.
Right. Which leads to the next points. It should be explainable and interpretable. Privacy enhanced is another key one. And finally, it must be fair, with harmful bias managed effectively.
That's quite a list. Is it possible to achieve all of those perfectly at the same time?
That's the tricky part. Often there are trade-offs. For example, making a model highly explainable might, in some cases, slightly reduce its predictive accuracy, or enhancing privacy might limit the data you can use for training.
So you had to balance these characteristics.
Exactly. You need to make informed decisions based on the specific context, the potential impact, and importantly, the potential degree of harm if something goes wrong.
Degree of harm.
Mm-hmm.
How do they suggest assessing that?
The framework emphasizes thinking about the severity of negative outcomes, both immediate and longer term. And this is where things like ethical review boards come in.
Like in medical research.
Similar idea. Getting diverse experts to review the AI system, assess potential societal risks, and recommend safeguards.
Okay, so we understand the risks. We have frameworks. What about practical steps? What can developers actually do during the process to make AI safer and more ethical?
The sources offer quite a bit here, broken down by stages. For data collection, it's crucial to follow privacy laws, obviously protect sensitive info, and meticulously document where the data came from and what's in it, especially personal or sensitive details.
Know your ingredients.
Precisely. Then, during training, you need security measures, so the model doesn't just memorize sensitive data points from the training set. Techniques like federated learning or zero-knowledge proofs can sometimes help here, training models without centralizing raw data.
Okay, training securely. What about testing it?
Evaluation needs to be really thorough. That means testing for bias across different groups of people, not just overall accuracy. Calculate error rates for subgroups. Stress test the system. Push it to its limits to see where it breaks.
Find the weak spots before deployment.
Exactly, and identify situations where it's likely to make mistakes, then build in alerts or mechanisms for human oversight in those cases. Having an ethical committee review before launch is also a good practice.
And it doesn't stop once it's deployed, right?
Absolutely not. Ongoing monitoring is critical. You need to keep checking its performance, its accuracy, its fairness out in the real world. Environments change, data drifts, new biases might emerge. You need to be ready to mitigate risks continuously.
It's a lifecycle approach. I think you mentioned something called data sheets for data sets.
Yes, it's a great concept proposed by researchers. The idea is simple. Just like electronic components have data sheets detailing their specs, usage, and limitations, data sets used for AI should too.
So documenting the motivation, composition, collection process, recommended uses.
All of that. It promotes transparency and helps people using the data set understand its potential strengths and weaknesses, including biases.
That seems incredibly useful. Let's zoom in on one specific area, healthcare. AI has huge potential there, but the ethical stakes feel particularly high.
They really are. You can map the traditional principles of medical ethics, autonomy, beneficence, doing good, non-maleficence, not doing harm, and justice directly onto AI in healthcare.
How does AI affect, say, patient autonomy?
Well, take informed consent. If an AI is helping with a diagnosis or suggesting a treatment, does the patient truly understand the AI's role, its uncertainties, the risks? Who's responsible if the AI makes a mistake that leads to harm?
That's a huge question, the responsibility piece.
It is, and patients still have the right to refuse treatment, even if an AI strongly recommends it. Their autonomy must be respected. Then there's non-maleficence, avoiding harm. We need robust testing to ensure AI tools are safe and don't introduce unexpected risks.
And justice, fairness.
Big concerns there too. Will AI tools be equally effective for all demographic groups? Or could they worsen existing health disparities if they're trained on biased data? Access is another justice issue. Will everyone benefit, or just those who can afford it?
And we talked about automation.
Yeah.
What about jobs in healthcare and the human touch?
Yeah, the potential displacement of healthcare workers by AI or robots is a concern. And maybe even more fundamentally, what about empathy? Can a machine really provide the compassionate care that's so important in medicine?
I know India used robots like Mitra during the pandemic.
Right, to reduce infection risk for staff by letting robots interact with patients for basic tasks. That shows a clear beneficence in a way.
But it also highlights the trade-off, right? Less human contact.
Exactly. It's always this complex balancing act between the potential gains in efficiency or safety and preserving those core human values and ethical principles in care.
It really is complex. Shifting slightly. Again, we're not just imposing our values on AI, but AI systems themselves seem to be expressing values. There was that study on the Claude language model.
Yes. Fascinating work. Researchers analyzed tons of real conversations people had with Anthropic's Claude models to see what values the AI actually demonstrated in practice.
How did they even do that? Define values for an AI.
They empirically identified recurring themes and principles in Claude's responses, building a taxonomy of values from the ground up based on the interactions.
And what did they find? Does Claude have a consistent moral compass?
It's nuanced. They found Claude expresses a lot of practical values like being helpful, clear, thorough, professional, and also epistemic values related to truthfulness and accuracy.
So being a good assistant, basically.
Largely, yes. The study also found it generally supports positive, pro-social human values. It tends to push back against things like rule-breaking for its own sake or moral nihilism.
Can you give examples? How does this show up in conversation?
Sure. The value of harm prevention often comes up when Claude refuses a request it deems potentially dangerous. Historical accuracy might be invoked when discussing controversial events. They even saw values like healthy boundaries in relationship advice or human agency when talking about technology ethics.
Wow, that's quite specific. So its values change depending on the topic.
They're very context dependent. And interestingly, how Claude responds also changes based on the user's expressed values. It strongly supports users expressing pro-social values, might try to gently reframe things and say mental health discussions, but actively resists values it sees as negative, like dishonesty or wanting to cause harm.
And does it say why it's resisting? Does it state its values?
That was another key finding. Claude is more likely to explicitly state its underlying values when it's resisting or reframing what the user said. That gives us a window into its operating principles.
So what are the main categories of values they identified?
They group them into 5 broad domains.
Yeah.
Practical, epistemic, knowledge-related, social, personal, and protective.
Okay.
But the values that seemed most consistent, showing up across many different situations, what they call trans-situational values, were mainly those service-oriented, pragmatic, epistemic ones, being a helpful, truthful assistant.
Which suggests maybe we need different ways of thinking about AI values compared to human values.
That's one implication, yes. We might need AI-specific value frameworks to really understand and guide these systems effectively.
It's like we're figuring out the ethics of AI, but also the ethics within AI simultaneously.
It's definitely a parallel process.
Okay, one last area to touch on briefly.
Yeah.
What about actual laws and government regulations globally? Is there specific AI legislation?
It's still very much an emerging landscape. There isn't really comprehensive, overarching AI-specific law in most places yet. In India, for example, the main relevant law is still the Information Technology Act from 2000, handling general data protection. The draft Personal Data Protection Bill from 2019 gets closer, addressing data processing and security.
So mostly applying existing data laws.
Largely, yes, or adapting them. Singapore has its Personal Data Protection Act, but they've also put out a Model AI governance framework, which is more like voluntary guidance.
And
The U.S. has things like Executive Order 13859 and Principles for AI Stewardship from the government, emphasizing fairness, non-discrimination, things like that. But again, it's more principles and framework-based than hard law, specifically targeting AI across the board. Some regions also have rules about transferring data across borders.
So it's a patchwork quilt right now with everyone starting to figure out their approach.
That's a good way to put it. A lot of frameworks, principles, guidelines, and adapting existing laws, but comprehensive AI-specific legislation is still mostly in development globally.
Right. Well, this has been incredibly illuminating, really diving into the practical side of AI ethics. Let's try and boil down the key takeaways for everyone listening.
Okay, I think the first is just acknowledging that AI, while powerful, has real ethical risks, and we've already seen significant failures. It's not theoretical.
Definitely. And accountability is non-negotiable. Companies, developers, users, someone is responsible when AI causes harm. You can't just blame the algorithm.
Right. Understanding why AI makes decisions, tackling that black box problem with explainability is absolutely crucial for building trust and preventing harmful outcomes.
And the good news is that frameworks and guidelines for responsible AI, like the NIST RMF and others, are being developed and starting to offer practical ways to manage these risks.
Yeah, there's a clear direction of travel towards trying to build and deploy AI more thoughtfully.
And for you listening, staying informed about these challenges is just so important. As AI weaves itself deeper into our lives, understanding its pitfalls and the efforts to address them is key to navigating this new era responsibly.
Absolutely. Which brings us to maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Thinking about all these examples, the chatbots, the deep fakes, the autonomous vehicles, the healthcare applications, what responsibility do you think individuals, companies, and governments each have here?
Yeah, how do we strike that balance, pushing innovation forward while putting up the necessary guardrails to prevent harm?
It's the central question, really. There are no easy answers, but it's a conversation we all need to be part of as this technology continues its rapid advance.